Every god has favorite children. Poseidon has Percy. At 12, Percy ripped the horn off a minotaur with his bare hands, stood in front of Ares, the god of war, and walked away. He summoned hurricanes, triggered a volcanic eruption at Mount St. Helens, survived Tartarus, a place that breaks gods, and came out the other side. Other demigods noticed. Gods noticed too. When Percy arrived at Camp Jupiter with no memory of who he was, they made him praetor within a week. Everyone has a theory: bloodline, prophecy, the sea itself. But there's a question underneath all of them that nobody answers. What if the power was never really Percy's? And what happens to him the moment Poseidon stops caring? The gap nobody can explain. The obvious answer is bloodline. Percy is a son of Poseidon, one of the big three. So naturally, their children carry more power than anyone else at camp, until you look at Thalia Grace and Nico di Angelo, a daughter of Zeus who can summon lightning and stop armies, a son of Hades who can raise the dead and drain the life from living things just by being near them. Both big three children, both terrifying, and neither of them comes close to Percy. Prophecy is the next answer. Percy stood at the center of the great prophecy. Fate needed him alive, so the world bent itself around keeping him that way. That explains why he survived Tartarus. It doesn't explain how he walked out with more control than he walked in with. The sea responds to you. Bloodline gets you in the room, and fate keeps you breathing. None of it explains the distance between Percy and everyone else. Which means the real answer is somewhere nobody has thought to look. It starts with Sally. To understand why Percy is different, you have to start somewhere most people don't. You have to start with Sally Jackson. Most gods don't love their mortal partners. They're drawn to them. Yes, they pursue them. But love, real love, is rare for a being that has existed for thousands of years and will exist for thousands more. Mortals are brief. Gods move on. When Percy was born, Poseidon came to the cradle, stood over his son, a warm smile, a hand on his head, a golden glow, and Percy carried that memory for the rest of his life, even though he was too young to fully understand it. Think about what it means to grow up with that, a fragment of something warm that you can't name and can't reach. Percy spent years being told his father was lost at sea, never confirmed dead, never present. And yet every time he was near the water, something answered, quietly, without words, just a feeling that he wasn't entirely alone in it. Most kids who grow up without a parent learn to stop expecting them. Percy never quite managed that, because the sea kept reminding him that his father was out there, watching, even when he couldn't show up. There's another detail most people scroll past. In the first book, when Sally and Percy are near the ocean, her eyes change color. Sally Jackson always seemed strangely connected to the sea in ways the books never fully explained. If Poseidon loved her deeply enough to leave a mark like that, Percy was born carrying something that ran deeper than divine blood alone. In The Lost Hero, Hephaestus tells Leo something that changes how the whole system works. Giving Leo fire, real fire, not a spark, is something Hephaestus says he does rarely. Gods choose what powers to give their children. They decide how much and to whom. If Hephaestus can choose how much fire to give Leo, then Poseidon can choose how much power to give Percy, and that's the real mechanism behind his power. Poseidon made a choice. He looked at his son, this boy born from a woman he genuinely loved, and gave him everything he could. Compare it to the other big three. Zeus rules through authority and distance. His children, Jason, Thalia, carry his power but not his presence. Hades retreats further still. Nico spent years not knowing who his father was, living in a hotel frozen in time, completely cut off from any divine connection. Percy had Poseidon watching from the water, and in a universe full of gods who treat their children like pawns, that turns out to be the most dangerous advantage of all. Gifted power can be taken away. Here's what the evidence actually points to. Poseidon loved Sally Jackson. He chose to give Percy more than bloodline alone could carry, and that distinction matters more than anything else in this theory. Inherited power can't be taken away, but gifted power can. Some people will call that plot armor dressed up as lore. But plot armor is random. It doesn't have a mechanism. It doesn't explain why Percy's half-siblings from Poseidon don't operate anywhere near his level, or why Riordan went out of his way to show us that gods actively choose what to give their children. Plot armor is what you call it when you can't find the reason. This video is the reason. Think about it this way. Percy controlled the river Phlegethon in Tartarus, a river of fire that exists in a realm completely outside Poseidon's domain. He controlled poison mist. He bent forces that had nothing to do with the sea. If this were purely about bloodline, none of that should be possible. The only explanation that consistently accounts for all of it is a god who deliberately gave his son more reach than the domain should allow. If Percy's power came from Poseidon's love, if it was a choice, a gift, something given rather than simply inherited, it was never fully Percy's to begin with. He moved oceans, survived Tartarus, held the weight of the sky. And behind each of those moments was a god who decided he was worth that much. Gods change their minds. We've seen it. Zeus pulled back from Thalia. Hades retreated so completely that Nico spent years not even knowing who his father was. The relationship between a god and their child in this universe is never guaranteed. But Poseidon has never been that kind of god. He kept showing up. In the Battle of the Labyrinth, he made his favoritism known, openly, unapologetically. When Percy stood in front of Olympus, Poseidon looked at him with something the other gods rarely show their children: pride. The kind that comes from a father who had been watching the whole time and wanted everyone to know it. Season 3 is coming, and for the first time, the people Percy loves most are the ones in danger, on a level where even Poseidon may not be able to protect him from what's coming. So the question that actually matters going forward isn't whether Percy is powerful enough. It's whether Poseidon still loves him enough to keep making him that way. Because if that changes, we find out who Percy Jackson actually is without his father's hand on his back. So here's where I land. Percy Jackson is powerful because his father chose to make him that way. Poseidon loved Sally Jackson, really loved her, in a way gods almost never love mortals. And Percy was born carrying all of it. Which means behind every impossible thing Percy has ever done was a father who gave him more than most demigods ever receive, and a son who still had to survive it. And with everything the Titan's curse is about to put him through, that's either the most comforting thing in the world or the most terrifying. So I want to know where you stand. Is Percy powerful because Poseidon loved his mother, or has that always just been a story we tell ourselves to make the plot armor feel earned? Let me know in the comments, because the answer changes everything about how his story ends. If you want to go deeper, I've got a video on every secret Camp Half-Blood is hiding that's worth watching next.